Hey, hi, hello. I'm back again with another interesting video, and this is again a relative of mine who had a very troubled 2024. Uh, I mean, recently he had a bad fall and then fractured his hip, and he has had other health issues. So last 1 year has been really tough for this gentleman. And I thought, it would be interesting to try and analyze this solar return chart for 2024, the last from May 2024 to May 2025, so that we can check if it really indicates a troubled year, especially health injuries and stuff, right? So that said, uh, you see screenshot is natal chart. So this is the scribe's natal chart. Okay, so as you can see, it's Aries ascendant. Okay, Aries is the rising sign, right? And if you're aware, this is the Greek square chart representation. The numbers that you see are actually the house numbers. So this is the first house, this is the second, this is the third, this is the fourth. So this is the fifth house, this is the ninth house, 12th house. So as usual, I'm using the Krishnamurti Ainamsha and the Alkabishis house system. So I'm not using a wholesale house system, but maybe in future I might post videos where I'm using the whole server system. I don't think it's going to make a world of a difference as long as you stick to correct principles for analyzing a chart, right? So now 2024. So if you see, this person was born in 1963. So 2024 minus 1963, right? So he had completed 61 years and was running the 62nd year, right? So if I subtract 62 from the nearest multiple of 12, it is 60 and then 2. Hence, the profected sign is the second sign from the ascendant, which is Aries. Second sign from Aries is Taurus. So the profected sign is 19 degrees of Taurus. Now this is 17 degrees of Taurus. So the profected ascendant moves here. So it's somewhere here. I would say profected ascendant 19 degrees Taurus. Right? It's 19 degrees of Taurus. Yeah. So the better way would be to map the profected ascendant in the solar return chart. So if you see in the next slide, we have the solar return chart for created for this person. Right. So this is the solar return chart. Right. So 22nd May 2024, which basically governs the year from May 2024 to May 2025. So that's the solar return chart. And if you see the solar return chart, the ascendant is Sagittarius, right? Now, as I said, as a best practice, you should map the profected ascendant, which is 19 degrees of Taurus, in the solar return chart. And if you see, 19 degrees of Taurus actually maps to, this is 7 degrees Taurus. So 19 degrees of Taurus somewhere is here, right? So this is the profected ascendant 19 degrees, right? PAC is profected ascendant. So the profected ascendant is actually in the sixth house. So obviously that's not a very good house. So sixth house being a trick house, sixth house represents illness, injuries, accidents. So all kinds of stuff, the traditional typical sixth house meanings, right? So obviously the profected ascendant is now landing in the sixth house at 19 degrees of Taurus, right? Now profected ascendant is 19 degrees of Taurus. So remember, it is still receiving a square aspect from Saturn. So remember, 1, 4, 7, 10, they're all squares. Similarly, 2, 5, 8, 11. So this is Taurus, this is Leo, this is Scorpio, this is Aquarius. So a profected ascendant is 19 degrees, and you have an aspect from Saturn. So perfected ascendant is Taurus and Saturn is Aquarius. So you have a square aspect from Saturn to the perfected ascendant. So obviously Saturn is an infortune. Also remember that this is a night chart, because the solar return is actually where the sun returns to the exact position. It's on 22nd May night at 8 p.m. So Saturn is contrary to the sect, and because of that Saturn is a lot more malefic, and hence the aspect of Saturn, square aspect of Saturn, is definitely not very helpful. So it's going to cause a lot of issues, right? So that is one part, right? Now let us also look at my favorite topic, which is distribution through the bounds. Okay, if you focus on the picture on the right, you see at this time ascendant, see, we talk about 2022 nearest ascendant was directed to the bounds of Mars in Gemini. Surprisingly, I was also checking the other important significators. So in the medieval era, the most important significators that they considered were ascendant, sun, moon, the MC, which is the midheaven, and then the part of fortune. So, but then typically what I'm seeing is, ascendant, midheaven, sun and moon are enough. And here, look at the coincidence. The sun, if you see in 2019, was directed to the terms of Mars. The moon, also in 2019, was directed to the terms of Mars. So both sun and moon, right? Moon is also body, remember, it is also the significator of body. They were directed to the terms of Mars in 2019. And in 2020, right, when COVID struck all of us, this person was severely ill. He was hospitalized, and it was like a death-like situation for him. So obviously that is very clearly shown by both the luminaries, the sun and moon, moving into the terms of Mars in Cancer. Okay, and if you really see another coincidence, see, sun and moon are moving into the terms of Mars in the sign of Cancer, right? Right? I mean, it's not like exactly what I wanted to point out, but then in this case, right? in the solar return chart, Cancer happens to be the 8th house. But of course, there is no significance as such here. But I just, it just struck me as, and I'm not just doing this live for you. Anyways, going back, so remember that this guy had, he really suffered during the COVID. He was like critically ill, and that is very clearly shown by the sun and moon directed to the terms of Mars in Cancer. And remember, Mars in Cancer, obviously Mars is debilitated. Secondly, when you talk about this concept of distribution through the bounds or terms, right? So whenever your ascendant is directed to the terms of malefic planets, right? Typically, you can't expect to have a smooth sail. So it's going to cause a lot of troubles. Now, if you see this person's natal chart, so let's look at the condition of Mars. So Mars, if you see, is in the 4th house, okay, 4th house in Leo, and if you see, it is, look at the aspect here. So Mars is actually getting an aspect from, okay, so Mars is actually getting an opposition aspect from Saturn. Mars is getting an opposition aspect. So remember, this is degree based aspects, right? So Mars is almost like, it's at 29 degrees Capricorn, which is very close to 0 degrees of Aquarius, and then from there it actually opposes, sorry, Saturn is at 0 degrees, almost 0 degrees Aquarius, and from there it opposes the natal Mars, right? You're getting it? So obviously there is a Mars Saturn opposition present in the natal chart, and of course, Saturn is very strong. Saturn is in its own house in Capricorn. But yeah, I mean, it is towards the end, and if you are really considering this opposition, then it's assuming that Saturn is in Aquarius, and even in that case, it is still in its own house. So you have a strong Saturnian aspect on Mars, and Mars is actually the bound lord. So it's an important chronocrater because, as I said, your ascendant is directed to the terms of Mars, your moon and sun are also directed to the terms of Mars. So Mars becomes a very important chronocrater, and the opposition from Saturn definitely is showing a lot of trouble. So Mars is facing an opposition from Saturn in the natal chart, and also in the if you see the solar return chart, you have the profected ascendant is also facing an opposition from Saturn. Now, as I said, ascendant is directed through the bounds of Mars in Gemini. So let me go there again. So ascendant is directed to the bounds of Mars in Gemini sign. Here, if you see, ascendant is directed to the bounds of Mars. This is Gemini. Ascendant is directed to the bounds of Mars in Gemini. So that is 17 to 24 degrees range of Gemini. 17 to 24 degrees Gemini. Right? Now going back here, the directed ascendant is 17 to 24 degrees of Gemini. So 17 to 24 degrees of Gemini, this is so 17 to 24 degrees of Gemini, this is 12 degrees of Gemini. So 17 to 24 degrees of Gemini will be somewhere here. Right? So the directed ascendant 17 to 24 degrees of Gemini is somewhere here. Now, if you notice, right, the directed ascendant is actually facing a lot of malefic aspects. You have Ketu at 19 degrees in Virgo. So as I said, 1, 4, 7, 10, 2, 5, 8, 7, 3, 6, 9, 12. Right? Cardinal signs, fixed signs, and dual signs. Right? Just a minute. Yeah. Cardinal signs, fixed signs, and dual signs. So you have Ketu in Virgo, and then you have Rahu in Pisces, obviously. So both of them are casting a square aspect on the directed ascendant, which is at 17 degrees. So quite close, 19 degrees, 17 degrees. So the directed ascendant is subject to square aspect from the nodes Rahu and Ketu, and it is also subject to a square aspect from Mars, right, which is at 22 degrees of Pisces. So the directed ascendant, I would say, is screwed. It is receiving aspects, square aspects, malefic aspects from Mars. It is receiving malefic aspects from Ketu and Rahu. So a lot of malefic aspects that the directed ascendant is receiving. Okay? So this again shows, and apart from that, the profected ascendant is also receiving a square aspect from Saturn. So profected ascendant receiving a square aspect from Saturn, directed ascendant receiving a square aspect from Mars. And remember, Mars is the natal 8th lord, right? So this person is an Aries ascendant, and for an Aries ascendant, Mars is the 8th lord. So Mars, if you see, is a square aspect to the directed ascendant. Directed ascendant is basically 17 to 24 degrees of Gemini, and that makes it clear Mars is also the 8th lord. The 8th lord is giving a square aspect to the directed ascendant, causing death-like situation, injury, accidents, and everything possible. And obviously, profected ascendant is also getting mapped to the 6th house of the solar return chart, and that again shows 6th house related matters. Also, coincidentally, the guardian of the horoscope. The guardian of the horoscope is basically the lord of the solar return ascendant, and that also happens to be posited in the 6th house. It is a Sagittarius ascendant in the year 2024, and the ascendant lord is placed in the 6th house along with the profected ascendant. So there is a lot of 6th house related stuff. You have an 8th lord malefic Mars aspecting the directed ascendant. So I mean, this itself is giving us enough clues that it's going to be a very, very tough year for this person, right? And then remember, equally important is that Mars is a chronocrater, hence the aspect of Mars is important because the ascendant is directed to the bounds of Mars, and hence any aspect to Mars or made by Mars is definitely very important. And as I said, the chronocrater Mars is also receiving an aspect from Saturn in the natal chart. If you see here, the natal chart, Mars is also receiving an aspect from Saturn. So Mars is getting a Saturnian aspect. Mars, remember, apart from being the 8th lord of the natal horoscope, in the solar return, Mars is also the 12th lord. Remember. So you have the 12th lord Mars casting a square aspect on direct ascendant. So this person was hospitalized, he had a major surgery. 12th house is confinement. Mars as such is a significator of injury, surgery. Ketu, in Nadi astrology, they also consider Ketu for cuts. So Ketu also has got a connection with surgery, Ketu or South Node, if you want to call it. So there are enough, I would say, testimonies to make us believe that this year is going to be a very tough year for him, especially a lot of Martian and Saturnian aspects, right? Now, apart from that, one more thing I observed in the bi-wheel chart, right? So here what you see is a bi-wheel chart. The inner chart is the solar return chart, whereas the outer chart is the natal chart or the radix chart. And here if you see, if you superimpose the, I would say, the natal chart on top of the solar return chart, which basically means the inner chart is solar return, natal chart is the, the outer chart. You see that the, just a minute, I think I explained it wrong. The inner chart is actually the natal chart, and the outer chart is the solar return chart, right? Because that's where you have the solar return ascendant. I'm sorry, so slight correction. So the inner chart is your natal, and outer chart is the SR chart, right? So it's like the solar return chart superimposed on the natal chart. And look at the thing. So this is the natal ascendant, which is 19 degrees of Aries. The solar return ascendant actually falls in the 8th house. So there is already a 6-8 kind of connection between the natal ascendant and the solar return ascendant. When I say 6-8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So already the natal, the solar return ascendant is mapped to the 8th house of this bi-wheel chart. And again, it is talking about 8th house related situation. So I think on top of whatever I mentioned, this is another additional proof that this guy would have had a very, very tough year. Especially, as I said, the chronocrater Mars. And another thing is the perfected ascendant Lord, right? Because the perfected ascendant is now 19 degrees Taurus. The perfected ascendant Lord is Venus. Remember, okay? So the position of Venus also is something that you can check whether how is Venus posited. So here, if you see in this bi-wheel chart, Venus is actually posited in the 12th house. So this is the ascendant. This is the first house. So Venus is actually in the 12th house, and Venus is in detriment because its own sign is Libra. It is 7 signs away. So in the medieval astrology they call it exile. So Venus is in detriment. Venus is in exile. So Venus is in the 12th house and really in a weak position. Again, 12th house is related to confinement and all that stuff, right? So that is about I think. These are some of the things that I could quickly observe, and I hope you found this interesting and informative. If there are any other observations, do let me know, and I hope you like the way I explained it. As I said, it's not always important for you to be exact that this is exactly what would have happened and stuff, but then I'm saying that use it to get a sense of how the year is going to shape up, and then maybe take corrective measures, follow any remedial measures, or whatever you follow based on other techniques that are already aware. But I'm saying use this as an additional technique, and I'm telling you, I'm quite amazed by the way the Greek techniques work. Unfortunately, many of these techniques did not make their way, and did not get adopted in the Indic system of astrology. So with that, thank you, and have a good weekend. Bye.